The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara Payan. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we are in beautiful Willits on a gorgeous farm, and we are with Katie Jeane and Joseph Haggard, Emerald Spirit Botanicals. Welcome to the show, guys. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
First question I always like to ask all my guests. What was your first cannabis experience?
Well, my first cannabis experience, my first time smoking cannabis was actually kind of a fun story. It was with my friend Ricky, and he was playing in a band actually, and there was a deal that I was one of the last people in my friend group to start smoking. And so I had agreed that I was going to smoke weed with a bunch of my friends the next day. And I was staying at his house, and he had carved a Jenga block into a pipe. And he talked me into taking a hit with him that night before I officially smoked weed with all of my friends. So the first time that I smoked was out of a Jenga block in the Willits Valley with my friend Ricky. And right after that, I passed out on the couch and then woke up the next day and smoked with a bunch of my other friends.
I gotta say that is the most original thing I've heard of being smoked out of. Like most people say, like, you know, a toilet paper roll or an apple, or I have not had the Jenga block yet. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a pretty fun start to enjoying cannabis, and yeah, never looked back.
Right on. Katie G.
Oh gosh. I'm pretty sure my first cannabis experience was with brownies, and they were quite strong, and I had definitely had a few of them, of course, as it goes.
Yeah, when something's tasty.
Oh yeah, they were very tasty, and I do believe it was sort of like the next day I had to do something, and it was, you know, it was an adventure, and I think I'll just leave it at that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, your farm is lauded and well known for not only your flowers, but your tinctures, and the fact that you specialize in minor and emerging cannabinoids. How did you get into your work? And how, being family that work together, how does that all work?
You want me to go, or you want to talk about the start of your journey? And
that would be awesome if we could talk about that.
Yeah. So I guess it started with a friend. This was like in 2013. Asked if I wanted to grow high CBD for a woman, I can't even remember her name, in the city that was working with patients. And I was like, absolutely, that's definitely what I want to do. And I was really, really excited for it. And I was like, okay, where can I get seeds? And, you know, I don't want clones. I want to do this from seed. And it just sort of started this whole journey that I've been on ever since then. And at the beginning of the journey, you know, I wasn't quite sure. You know, first I was like, oh, high CBD, that's so amazing. And I was kind of diving into that. But then, you know, really within the first year, I was having a meditation with the plant. And what I got was that, you know, high THC and high CBD are both sort of the extremes that cannabis can offer. Mm-hmm. And that what it was the message that I got that was that my work was to bring them together and to share that with the world. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. I was like, that was sort of my task, was to to bring that forward as them together in a balanced way.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people don't realize that we had a lot more balance in cannabis before.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us who were, smoking or partaking earlier on, we got that more balanced feel with lower THC profiles, more cannabinoids, and as they started doing selective breeding, things started to change and it became more intense. And not to yuck anybody's yum, but like I remember when I worked in a dispensary, I had a very famous comedian who came in and said, "Hey, the stuff that y'all are smoking right now is crazy and I don't know what to do with that." And I was like, "Well, look at a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC." And the next time he came in, he was just a big smile on his face. And he's like, "That was my jam. That's what I remember." And for you to be bringing this forward and continuing the conversations, or actually really like restarting the conversations about THC not being the end all be all, and there's so many things that we're missing out on, is huge. Because I think like when we talk about the endocannabinoid system and homeostasis, it's about having that balance and the entourage effect. But you've also done a lot of work around THCV, and you've really been on the forefront of that. And but I'd like to talk about like how you got to that, but also, Joseph, I don't want to forget about talking about how you got into your journey with cultivation with your mom too.
Yeah. My journey, well, I grew up on the land, and my mom raised me living in a teepee, and we had our little garden outside. And so, the nature of growing up and living in a teepee is you have very little distractions. We didn't have electricity, so there wasn't media, but we had our garden outside. And so that, kind of sparked my interest early on, and got me involved in the garden. And then the first time I actually grew my own cannabis plant was at my dad's house. And I grew a couple in the backyard. And it was just so cool to have this experience of like it being like I'd been smoking cannabis, but now this was like one of my plants that I had watched go through the entire from seed to smoke, so to speak. And that kind of like that experience, just I wanted to do that again. And so when I went off to college, then I, continued to just grow a couple plants here and there wherever I could, and continued learning about farming. And then kind of came back full circle. I was doing a biodynamic apprenticeship program at Rudolph Steiner College, and I called Mom one day and was just, like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go live on a farm, and I think farming work is going to be something that I'll enjoy." And she was kind of like, "Well, what if you came back to the farm here?" And supported her, and River was also on the farm, and to me it was like, oh, well, that would be the most ideal, because part of the challenge with farming is, if you work somewhere but you don't have the land, it's like it's something that you can be working on, but at any time, the land, something might change with the land. And so to be able to come back and work with Mom and my brother River was just a huge blessing. And then we quickly kind of realized that with legalization happening, that there was really a diversification of skill sets that was needed. And it was no longer just about growing high quality flower. It was about managing all of these different facets of being a legal licensed cannabis farm. And so I have now more recently found myself in a role of doing a lot less like actual physical plant touching and connecting with the plants. I do a lot more of the compost work on the farm. So building the soil and preparing the soil and composting all of the plants as they're finishing, and turning that into the fertility for next year. And then building the brand of Farm Cut and Emerald Spirit Botanicals. And that's been a really just incredible journey to go on, because I can really go out into the world with confidence, knowing that every single bud that goes in each farm cut jar was grown with the utmost love and care and respect, because it was grown by my mom. And that is something that's, I think is just so special about the dynamic that we have, is even though, you know, when we first came back together, we didn't really know, you know, where our partnership was going to lead us to. But, you know, now kind of where we sit is, it's a really beautiful dynamic where I can be on the farm and support mom here as she needs with physical work. But my brother is also here to do that. And so I've found myself more in a role of bringing the medicine out to the people and helping educate, tell the story of the farm and what it is that my mom's doing. So it's been a really special dynamic that we have here, and a great honor to be able to represent her medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it's a beautiful thing that, you know, turning people on to sun-grown cannabis has been an interesting endeavor, because in the past, all the really good sun-grown cannabis was sold as indoor, so people didn't know any better. And so when they think about sun-grown, they have very different opinions of it than what's the facts around that. But the work that, especially that, not only the quality of your flowers, but the work that you've been doing with THCV, I think really highlights to people how incredibly special these flowers are. And we're seeing more and more people starting to speak up more about, and you know, this is not to disparage our friends who grow indoor. There are very talented cultivators who do that as well. But there's just something magical, just incredibly special about sun-grown that we really need to get the messaging out and share that with people, so that, you know, craft farmers that are doing what you do can continue to grow and share that beauty.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one thing that I share with people to try to help them, you know, understand what some of these unique gifts are that come from sun-grown cannabis is, you know, when you think of yourself as a person and you think of how you feel when you're outside and you're surrounded by all of this diversity of life, and there's the sun and the moon and the stars, and your feet are on the ground and you feel connected, there is a certain experience that you can have when you really quiet the mind and just start to listen to the forces of nature coming and interacting with you. And that's very different than when you're in a building, let's say on the first story or the second story, and you know, it's different types of light. It's not the sun, it's not the moon, it's not the stars. It's very clean and sterile, which, you know, has its benefits, but there's also, the plant reacts to that environment in a different way than the plant that is outdoor. And yes, it has to deal with a little bit more pest pressure or mold pressure, but I think when you can breed and develop genetics in that setting and get genetics that, you know, some of these plants we've been growing on this piece of property for over 10 years. And so they've adapted to the climate, they've adapted to a lot of the pests, and we've learned how to work with these genetics in a way that creates a really clean, flavorful, fully expressive flower. And when you can do that, I believe that sun-grown has an opportunity to express something that indoor can never express. And that's something that's unique, but it has to be done well and it has to be done right. And it takes a lot of time. And, you know, with indoor, you can do stuff clean and quickly. And, you know, I understand why there's this difference between the two. But for me, like, once you try good sun-grown, I think it's hard to like go to anything else. There's really something special there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the terpene profiles are so much more intense. Like, learning about how the plants use terpenes to not only, you know, repel pests, but also communicate with one another, and just like the reaction to the environment. It's like, you know, we talk about, it is, I like to talk about grapes and cannabis and like the similarities, because when you talk about terroir and appellations and grapes being grown in certain areas, how the environment affects them, because there's that good stress that happens to the plants. It brings out the best in them. Do you find that it just affects the terpenes, or does that affect also the range of cannabinoids that you've got in your plants as well?
It's I know it definitely affects the terpenes. It's hard to really say how much is environmental factors impacting the cannabinoids versus my mom's like openness to breeding and receiving some of these cannabinoids, because there's definitely this unique relationship that goes on between the plant and the people cultivating the plant. And mom has done such a good job of keeping her heart open and sort of listening to the cannabis plant as a guide to allow her to assist the plant in bringing forward some of its unique medicinal benefits that I don't see a lot of breeders doing right now. I think a lot of people are focusing on THC and have been focusing on THC, and we're starting to see more people exploring minor cannabinoids a little bit more. But mom's been doing it for almost 15, 20 years now. And when you can dedicate time to doing something with a genetic lineage for that long, you start to get some unique expressions of mixed ratios of cannabinoids that I think are harder to find in a genetic line that's been selected for THC year over year. And so whether there's environmental factors that are also playing into the diverse range of cannabinoids that we're seeing is hard to say, but definitely mom's openness to welcoming in these minor cannabinoids and then being able to identify them and select for them in her breeding work year over year. I think that to me is sort of the main guiding force that's bringing these minor cannabinoids forward. But I would definitely not rule out some sort of environmental forces also playing a role, but I think the main role is probably her, her like intuition, but then also, just some of the tools that she's brought to her to support her in bringing these cannabinoids forward. I think those are kind of the main guiding roles.
Give the gift that everyone will remember this holiday season, the 12 J's of Christmas gift box. This limited edition collection features 12 premium pre-rolls from 12 sun-grown farms in Humboldt, Mendocino, and Trinity counties. It's the ultimate gift for craft cannabis lovers and a way to support small farmers in the Emerald Triangle. Hurry, quantities are limited. Reserve yours now at emeraldtrianglecraft.com. Yeah. I love THCV, and your Pink Boost was the first example of THCV that I had experienced. And I loved mixing it with CBD because it actually helps, or CBG, I should say, because CBD, I love it, but it also can make me a little spacey. But CBG and THCV together really help me with my focus during the day when I'm working on things and writing. How did you decide to do your work with THCV? Because really, you're known for that. It's really started some very interesting conversations where people are starting to understand the beauty of that cannabinoid.
Well, I had been working with CBD for quite a while, and I kind of felt like I was ready for a new project. I felt really like, I have a lot of like high CBD options with a bunch of different terpene profiles. I have a lot of 1-to-1 THC CBD with different terpene profiles, and some, 1-to-2, 1-to-3, 1-to-4, like just a great abundance, and felt really kind of complete. And so I was really just like open to what else wants to come.
Yeah.
And And I just sort of, was like, oh, okay, well, let's see, THCV. Let me see what I can find here. And I got a whole bunch of seeds from a variety of sources, and just, I've always done or since 2014, I've done a lot of testing. And I do it in the vegetative when the plants are, maybe when they're usually right after they express their gender.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't even remember. At that point, I was usually testing around 500 plants a year.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
It's a lot, especially I'm a very small farm. And so, that's a lot of plants.
We don't even grow 500.
No. We usually grow like 60,
Yeah.
So I'm going to test like 500 females, and so just and looking for these gifts. And so that's kind of how the THCV started. And at first it was really in one seed batch that I got that
Mm-hmm.
I was, getting like, 2%. Oh, I can't remember I don't even know if I got to 3% that first year. I think it was just 2.
Yeah.
But, it's like the males and the females, and then just keep supporting the creation, the seeds to come and the next generation. So, and then it was like, because we didn't even really know what this new cannabinoid was going to offer us, and so that was also just a beautiful, beautiful gift to receive its benefits, its gifts, what it had to share.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I love about the work that we do is that we're constantly learning and constantly learning, constantly being disproved, and being like, there's just like so much joy in that. But for our listeners who may not be familiar with THCV, because we get people who are listening all over the world, would you explain to them what it is and maybe some of the highlights of it?
Yeah. So THCV, kind of generally the first question that I get from people is like, what does the V mean? And so the V stands for varin. Basically what varin represents is when you look at THC and THCV, they have a slightly different carbon side chain. So they interact with the endocannabinoid system slightly differently. And ultimately, when it comes down to like the effects and the experience, there is some variation, but I generally refer to what I call shared experiences. And these are experiences that I hear from a wide variety of people. And those shared experiences it's a heightened sense of focus, creativity, mood elevation, and kind of this almost like visionary perspective. It's great for like creatives and artists. And then when we dive into like some of the research around THCV, we are starting to see that THCV appears to potentially help with diabetes and helping to regulate blood sugar. And that's helped us to really understand a little bit more behind this phenomenon of it appears to be an appetite regulator. So it interacts with our appetite in a unique way, and for many people can help suppress hunger. And we believe that may be correlated to this relationship with blood sugar that we're seeing in helping with diabetes. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done there to really understand that like interaction. And we've also seen it be very helpful in supporting people with neuropathy or neuropathic pain. So it can be both a fun cannabinoid to just, help be creative, uplifting, mood elevated, kind of just like a joyful, fun type of experience, but it also has some of these more like deeper medicinal benefits that, when you start to work with THCV, taking it as like a daily supplement and using it for, 2 to 4 weeks, you start to see some of these other deeper medicinal shifts start to happen that, are going to be different than that. Like, oh yeah, I smoked a THCV joint last night. It was great. Like I had a good time with my friends, versus like, man, I've been using your THCV tincture for a month now. And I've already lost 10 pounds and I can tell that it's shifting my relationship to my food. I'm starting to feel more satisfied with less food. I'm more focused in the work that I'm doing. We start to see some of these more like, in my opinion, like profound healing events happen with people when they start to use THCV on a regular basis. And that's what's really exciting to me is some of these like life-changing healing potential that it has to offer. And it just happens to be great that you can smoke it in an evening and go have a fun social, outing with your friends, and you can be chatty and have a good time. So, I think it's been incredible to see that, the work that Mom started. And, I think, the first year it was like, the number that comes to my head is like right around 1 in 80 plants had around 2% THCV.
Wow.
And so when she first started this breeding project, like it was certainly an outlier. And, this took years of first identifying the THCV in these unique plants and then tracking the THCV through the males and the females, crossing them, and then starting those seed lots, and just slowly over many years developing the seed line of Pink Boost Goddess to express higher levels of THCV. And this was really just trusting in the plant's ability to bring forward this new medicine that was going to support humanity at this time. I remember that being something that Mom was always kind of sharing in her work is, that in her quest to explore cannabinoids beyond CBD, it was really giving the cannabis plant an opportunity to bring forward new medicine that the cannabis plants felt was needed for humanity at this time. And that was a pretty profound perspective that she shared with me a number of times in this breeding work. And it's pretty wild because when you look at our culture right now and you look at THCV, it's like focus. Like we have a lot of people struggling with focus. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of people struggling with depression. And we have a lot of people that are overeating. And so to see that this cannabinoid kind of came forward from this perspective and then offered these gifts to help us with focus, to help us with mood, to help us with appetite and consumption. There's some pretty profound layers within that. And it's been incredible to just hear stories from patients around California, just, bringing their feedback to us and, telling us how it's changed their life and how it's helped them to focus, or it's, helped them change their relationship to food and to feel more satisfaction in their life. So, those are just some of the amazing gifts that THCV has to offer, but we're also still learning a lot. There's still a lot that, there's still a lot to be discovered with this cannabinoid. And then also kind of to your point about THCV and CBG, there's a lot to understand in this dynamic relationship of THCV with other cannabinoids. And how does that relationship ripple out into the human experience? And then, some of the work that we're also doing right now is bringing forward THCV with different terpene profiles. So Pink Boost Goddess holds one terpene profile, but we've now started to breed other THCV genetics that are rich in other terpenes. And so you can start to understand what's the undercurrent of effects of THCV, and then what are these other supporting functions that come in when you pair it with CBG or when you pair it with linalool or beta-caryophyllene. And that is, there's lifetimes of work to be done there to really understand those dynamics. But it's fun to breed the genetics and then, get some of the experiences from people and hear those stories, and then, just kind of build our understanding from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think the beautiful thing with having more conversations about the minor cannabinoids is knowing that for most of us tolerate cannabis. Some of us, even though we create our own endogenous cannabinoids, don't tolerate phytocannabinoids. And I always tell people, and that's okay. You can look at adaptogens and other things if you're looking for balance. As human beings, we're constantly striving towards homeostasis. And nowadays, it seems like we need that more than ever. But it's also a call for mindfulness. Like when we're like, you were talking about growing up in the teepee and not having like being inundated with, media, television, all that stuff, and being able to focus, that is a gift, because we are inundated with so much these days that we've lost touch with ourselves. And cannabis is that opportunity. Like when I would teach my classes, I would tell people, it's, some people will say that cannabis is, a way of escaping things. But I would say that, as cannabis is biphasic, its uses as well, because it's also a call to grounding, and being in touch with everything that we put in our body creates a reaction. But our experimentation with cannabis really brings that home, because it's in a way that we can't necessarily ignore. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great tool to reflect in other things in our life as well.
Yeah, and I think also it's like it brings a sense of community, of people coming together to share in this sacred herb. And we're participating by sharing cannabis together. We're also participating in this historical relationship where cannabis and human beings have evolved alongside each other for thousands of years. And through prohibition, that connection was kind of separated. And now we can come back together and recommune with this plant, recommune with ourselves, and recommune with our community. And I think, when we do it in a conscious way, you can really, tune into yourself and tap into, how am I feeling right now? And how is this plant, shifting the way that I feel, and how can I use this plant to enhance the moment that I'm trying to put myself into? And the beauty of having these different minor cannabinoids and different terpenes is it gives you a wider portfolio of options to, for example, like the Rose Queen with just higher CBD. It's like, a lot of people use it for anxiety. Is like, I'm struggling with anxiety, but I can't really be high right now. But cannabis does help me with anxiety. And you can use something like the Rose Queen that doesn't have a psychoactive effect for most people, and do something that's going to be more gentle on the body. Or you could go with something that has a higher THC option that maybe can help you to kind of check out of something that might be traumatic or really just like causing struggle. And kind of set that to rest while you work on certain elements of yourself, so that then you can go and really work through that traumatic event. But I think it really does start with, a conscious relationship with the plant, and using it to really connect in with yourself instead of using it as an escape. And I think the minor cannabinoids really allow more people to use it in a way that they can connect in with themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have actually a family friend who was sick with cancer, and he had been sober for over 20 years, and he needed help with appetite and stress. And he came to me and he was asking about that. And he said, my one wish is, because the prognosis was not good, he's no longer with us, but was his biggest wish was to die a sober man. And we introduced him to CBD or CBG, and not only did it help with his appetite, it did help with his anxiety, and it put his mind at ease, because he felt balance but not euphoria. So he felt like he was living with his values on his own terms and getting the relief that he needed.
Nice.
It was really beautiful. And you just like talking about balance and just the beauty of, what you grow and the tinctures that you make. It's like we did a little walk out on the farm before this. It's a very warm day, so if I'm glowing. But it's just gorgeous outside, and you not only have cannabis plants, but you have so many other plants, or it's a whole like ecosystem of balance. Do you want to talk a little bit about the farm and your practices and your ethos around that? Humboldt Seed Company from California's legendary Emerald Triangle is the state's largest licensed cannabis seed provider. Blending traditional breeding with modern innovation, they've created fan favorites like Jelly Donuts, Chicken and Waffles, California Haze, and the cult classic Blueberry Muffin. Visit HumboldtSeedCompany.com for top quality seeds and educational content. And keep an eye out for their upcoming Uruguay documentary. With pheno hunts at leading farms worldwide, Humboldt Seed Company brings unique aromas and flavors straight to you.
Yeah, I can, Mom, you can jump in if you want to on anything, but, part of the philosophy is that, diversity is really important, not just in diversity of cannabinoids, but also in your plant communities. And to have food that nourishes us that's grown here on the farm is also very important. And so the garden is really a mix of food that nourishes us on the farm, different medicinal herbs and flowers that support pollinators and support beneficial insects, and then the cannabis plants. And we also have some plants that really are just there as biomass producers that we can harvest and use it to make compost. And so there's all of these different roles that the plant kingdom fills. And within the garden, we want to make sure that all of those are represented. So, we have food, we have medicine, we have pollinators, we have like nutrient builders that are sending deep tap roots down into the soil and harvesting nutrients that we can't access and making those available in their leaves that then we can harvest the leaves and turn it into compost. And so there's all of these different properties that different plants bring forward. And one thing that really troubles me and kind of scares me is that how much of our agricultural systems have become reliant on single crop fields and monocrops. And it just creates so many challenges because if a pest shows up, there's only one plant that it can eat. So if that bug happens to like that plant, then it's going to start to reproduce really quickly. And suddenly you have a quote unquote pest outbreak, even though it's just an insect that's like, look, I love this plant and it's great. So I'm going to start reproducing here. That's what nature does. And when you have this diversity in the garden, even if a pest or a potential pest does show up, you have such a diverse insect population, diverse plant population, that there's already such a strong balance that exists within the garden, and each insect has found its little niche that it belongs in. And so when a pest shows up, we can identify it because there's certain flowers and certain plants that in larger agriculture, they call them indicator crops that we can see, there's maybe some aphids that are showing up over here. And, so let's keep an eye on that and make sure that, they don't become too widespread. Mm-hmm. Or we have just this abundant diversity of beneficial insects that are, going around and they need something to eat too. And so maybe they can feed on some of the aphids and it gives them some food. And then, there's the food that's nourishing us. And that's really important because if the farmer is healthy and happy and fully nourished, then we can do good work. And we do our work from a good place in our hearts. And those are all really important factors that I think when you try to simplify agriculture down to like, okay, we're just going to grow this single crop in this acre, you lose a lot of this diversity, and the magic is in the diversity. And so it's really important for us in growing and having our garden the way that we do, that we're honoring the abundance, that we're honoring the diversity, and that we're welcoming that into the garden so that all of the plants can be a part of this community. And you had kind of mentioned earlier of like, a little bit of stress is good. Zero stress, in my opinion, creates laziness. And you want to have a little bit of stress on your plants because it increases your terpene profiles. It increases that expression. It's sort of, it drives a stronger will. And I think that's an important quality to be bringing forward in our medicine, in our food, and also in the human beings that are alive on this planet. And so finding that balance of like just a little bit of stress to help increase that expression and improve that expression really comes out in a diversified garden in a pretty special way. So, I think those are a couple of the points, but yeah. Do you want to add?
Well, I think the other thing that's really important is the beauty.
Yeah.
Beauty is one of the it's just one of them. I mean, I do consider to be one of the like really important things in the garden is the beauty.
Yeah.
It's like of great importance that things are, in beauty and creating that energy.
Well, how can they thrive without that, right?
Right. And so I would say that's another thing that's always good to speak to is the beauty, the importance of the beauty and what that creates for the plants and for the people.
Yeah. Well, all that beauty and everything that you've instilled into your work, all of the heart and the love has really, it's created some amazing conversations. You won the Golden Bear this year at the California State Fair, and I just wanted to congratulate you both on that because it was really well earned. And how surprising is it for some people when they think about, so often on people's lips are the THC percentages. Your work is proof that cannabis is much more complex than that.
Yeah. The Pink Boost Goddess is tests around 9 to 10% THC. And, I think a lot of people, when in our culture today and the narrative that is really dominating the cannabis scene is all around, you need high THC in order to have the cannabis experience that people are looking for. And I think, winning the Golden Bear for the second year in a row with the Pink Boost Goddess really gives an opportunity for us to reevaluate this narrative of, is THC really the end all be all of cannabis? And the fact that it's Pink Boost Goddess, which is rich in THCV, really opens this question of, what sort of gifts do these minor cannabinoids have to offer? And, what other minor cannabinoids might there be that we could begin to explore and learn more about? And then also the terpenes. I mean, both years that Pink Boost has won the Golden Bear, it's had over 4% terpenes. And I think, one thing that I first heard it at the Emerald Cup a few years ago, but it was when Alec Dixon was doing a presentation, and he was really highlighting the terpene to cannabinoid ratio as a kind of as a metric to help customers determine what was good quality cannabis and what might not be the highest quality cannabis. And he pointed out, pay attention to the terpene to cannabinoid ratio. And Pink Boost Goddess usually sits between like a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 terpene to cannabinoid ratio. Whereas if you take the average terpene content in California is right around 1.3%. And then you look at, most people are seeking cannabis that's around 30% THC. So that's closer to like a 25-to-1 terpene to cannabinoid ratio. And so, I think that was an interesting bit of insight that Alex shared with us. And that really clicked with me. And I see that in a number of our cultivars is it's lower THC, higher terpenes. And then, marrying the THC with another cannabinoid to really help curate a specific experience has, really led me and a number of other people on a pretty fun journey of just exploring some of these other medicinal gifts that the plant has to offer. And it's flavorful, it's fun, and it's really just been a great journey to be on. And huge thanks to Mom for breeding all of these genetics that I can, then be able to experiment with and explore and try to articulate out to other people so that they can be encouraged to try them as well.
Yeah, it's a great way to illustrate, when we went from medicinal to recreational, one of my greatest fears was that we were going to forget that cannabis was medicine and we were going to forget the patients. But the work that you do really impresses upon the fact that people still need this. They're attracted to it. They want it. And once they get turned on to it, they don't understand why they hadn't heard about it before. And so the work that you both are doing is incredibly, incredibly important. What are some things that you're thinking about doing in the future? Do you have any plans, or are you refining what you've got going on now, or is it too early to talk about it?
Well, I think, and I can share a little bit, but unless you want to about some of the breeding that you're doing right now, Mom?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some of those conversations might be too early to talk about till we have final,
test results.
Final test results.
Understandable, but when you do, I would love to geek out with you on that.
We'd be happy to share. We just don't want to we want to just have more verification.
Absolutely. Well, and you're saying that really impresses upon the fact of how thoughtful your approach is, because so many people are willing to just jump out there and be like, oh, well, it's going to do this and it's going to do that. And you're like, let's sit with it and explore it a little bit more before we put it out in the world. And I totally appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the plants always surprise us. It's like, we might see a certain minor cannabinoid coming forward. And then, as it grows up, something might change. And so it definitely is as the flower is growing out in the garden, there's some things that we're certainly excited about, but we don't know if that ratio or if that specific cannabinoid is going to be there by the time we harvest and dry the flower. But there are some exciting things that may be coming.
I'm excited to hear about it when it does. I know it will. Yeah. I'm excited to hear about it.
Maybe not this year, maybe this year, but certainly in years to come.
Well, and you've been such an integral part of starting the conversations about minor cannabinoids, not just, starting with CBD, but going beyond. When you're talking to people who are working in dispensaries and want to learn more, or consumers, what are some of the points that you bring up to kind of pique people's curiosity to delve in and explore what might work well for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remind people, about the endocannabinoid system. That's one place that I really start with is, reminding everyone that we have a system inside of our body that is responsible for maintaining balance. And cannabis can be a supplement for that system in bringing in some of these phytocannabinoids. And if we only supplement that system with a single cannabinoid, then it becomes difficult. I believe it becomes difficult for the endocannabinoid system to perform its role of maintaining balance and homeostasis. And this is just kind of an intuitive hunch. It's nothing that I've been able to define quantifiably, but intuitively, I also think that if we're supplementing our endocannabinoid system with cannabis that has mixed ratios in balanced amounts, then intuitively that's something that will support the endocannabinoid system in its role of maintaining homeostasis. And I mean, anecdotally, I've heard hundreds of stories validating this theory, but we just don't have the science that can like quantifiably say for certain that that's what's happening. But anecdotally, I believe it is happening, that we have these mixed ratios that are really supporting a more balanced experience. And certain people want to get super high, but I think the majority of us want to just, enjoy a nice light functional buzz at the end of the day, or like with a little outing with friends. And it's like, you can do that with something that's right around 10% THC. And I hear from so many people they're like, man, I've been smoking all of this stuff and I was kind of starting to get burnt out with cannabis. And then I found your guys' mixed ratio stuff and I started smoking it. And man, this is like some of the weed that I've been looking for so long. Like it makes me feel how I want to feel it. I'm catching a nice buzz, but I'm still like, I can still be present with my friends or my family. I can still do what I need to do. I'm not couch locked for 2 hours. I'm not like binge watching something or binge eating something because I don't know what to do with myself. It really helps you to tune in instead of tuning out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a gift of a balanced ratio of cannabinoids. So I encourage a lot of people to broaden your perspective on cannabis beyond THC, and to really remember that cannabis has evolved alongside human beings for thousands of years, and that cannabis that we evolved alongside produced a lot more than just THC. Mm-hmm. And so we're at the event of a remembering in our relationship with what's been considered by many civilizations to be one of the most potent medicinal plants on the planet. And if we're only going after that plant for THC, I think, we're doing her a disservice by thinking of this plant as, oh, cannabis is for THC. It's no, this has so much more to offer. And the work that my mom is doing is giving people an opportunity to experience that once again. And I think that's pretty special.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. Yeah, it is. Wrapping up, what are some things that you're excited and hopeful about? And it's a broad question, so you can answer it any way you want.
Well, I mean, I'm always excited about the breeding work and what's to come. And so I'm excited about... there's several plants out in the garden that I'm excited about and really curious about to see what sort of, gifts they have to offer. That's always really exciting for me. And then, of course, also, receiving the pollens and then getting ready to share them into the garden and creating more seeds and, more medicines for the future. So that's exciting stuff for me. And I also feel like, as more of these different cannabinoids are coming, and then also in relationship with, they're coming and in relationship with other cannabinoids, how those affect us. What are the gifts that those medicines have to offer us? And so also playing around with some different tinctures and exploring. So yeah, that's definitely my spot.
How about you, Joseph?
I'm really excited to be broadening our offerings beyond just the 7-gram jars, to also be offering pre-rolls that more people can get to try our flower, and really excited about the tinctures, because the tinctures sort of offer a format that you can try it in a variety of different ways. I mean, you can just try it straight under the tongue, but you can really use a tincture in in so many different ways, whether it's, as dripping it into a drink or putting it as a little edible topper on your meal, or, you had mentioned just rubbing some onto your skin as a little topical. Or
I've had a friend who's used tinctures and added them to Epsom salts to create baths.
Yeah. So there's really, the tinctures are, you can, with these tinctures, it's the cannabis extract and coconut oil, and you can really integrate that into your life in almost any way. So I'm really excited to have these out and available, and just hugely honored to see that the Pink Boost won the silver at the State Fair for tinctures in its first year out. But just really excited to see how the tinctures are received by the people, and to just be able to continue to broaden our offerings, so that people can experience some of these other medicinal gifts that the plant has to offer.
I'm so excited about this. And for those of you who haven't tried tinctures, they are amazing. They're easy to dose. It's easy to control. They're gentle. You really have to check them out. For people who want to follow you on social media or check out your products, how do they do that?
You can find us on Instagram at Emerald Spirit Botanicals. I encourage folks, because Instagram can be a little shaky these days with banning people. So
that's an understatement, Joseph.
Yeah, so you can follow us on there as long as we're there, but really joining our email list, emeraldspiritbotanicals.com, or farmcutcannabis.com. We also have an Instagram for Farm Cut. It's at FarmCutCanna. I think the best way is joining the email list. And so if you go to our website, you can sign up there. And on our website, we break down each of the strains that we've bred, some of the stories from people that have experienced those strains, and really you can take a deeper dive into it. So that's at emeraldspiritbotanicals.com.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So this is our Craft Farmer Month. Every November, we highlight craft farmers and the beautiful work that they do. Check out our other episodes. We're going to be running all month. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay curious, stay engaged, and it's a crazy world out there, people. Be good to each other. Until next time. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.